Okay, thank you everyone for tuning into this podcast. It is our relaunch, and this time we are in person. We got a nice shiny equipment for this episode, and we also got a prestigious guest. Abbas, thank you very much for coming on. And maybe before we dive in, maybe you can tell a bit about us. Why about some of the stuff you've done, some of your achievements, and of course, how you ended up in this podcast.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. Looking forward for our actual discussion on this podcast.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can start with a bit of How was your morning today?
Morning has been cold. When I wake up, it was around like 4-5 degrees today. So no, it was good. Yesterday we had a good weekend and a good sunshine, but today morning was cold, but it looks like the weather is turning well. It was a good morning. I came to city a bit early, had a coffee meeting with one of my mate, and I thought it's a perfect time to start with a good conversation and a coffee, and then following up for this podcast. So looking forward to have a chat with you today.
Yeah, very nice. Honestly, I'm from Chicago originally. They say about Chicago, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's honestly a lot more true for Melbourne. The Melbourne started, it was like 5 degrees, and now it's like 25, honestly. Yes. Like I was feeling hot as I was walking here. All right, so maybe, a bit of a quick introduction. I'm Samuel. I'm the CEO of ExeQuantum, which is a Melbourne-based post-quantum cryptography company. That's essentially, as the name suggests, assists in the migration to post-quantum cryptography. So as quantum computers continue to develop and possess more and more of a threat to our current encryption systems, from your WhatsApp messages to your bank accounts to your medical records, ExeQuantum is helping with the migration to the type of encryption that quantum computers cannot break. And today we have Abbas. He's a CISO at Fort Silver. He also used to be in Microsoft and a bunch of very, very big names. Maybe I'll let you introduce yourself a bit and talk about it.
Yeah, so recently I joined a company called Silverfort as their Chief Identity Security Advisor for the Asia region. Prior to that, I was with Microsoft for the last 6.5-7 years as a Chief Cybersecurity Advisor for the Asia Pacific region. So now the transition has been good. I'm now focusing a lot more on identity security, covering not only the human but also the non-human identity part of it, which is somewhat we will talk about it today in terms of how it is aligning with your business in terms of the quantum or the cubic part of it as well. So been in the industry for the last 25 years, 27 years to be exec required. I also do many things, such as I'm also a professor of practice with the Latrobe University, where I teach cyber risk, cyber governance, and cyber operations. And I have a passion of writing these days, so I'm writing multiple books on different topics, written books on threat hunting in the cloud, zero trust, risk management. And most recently, I released a book on cloud container security, and just signed a contract for writing a next book on industrial computers, industrial system, or a SCADA or OT environment, and how it has been targeted by attacker in that fashion and why it is important. So looking forward to have a bit of a chat on that as well.
It's a very interesting field, actually. SCADA and OT systems are a bit more overlooked compared to some of the other things that are being targeted by a lot of the post-quantum vendors. I'm only focusing on like fintech, healthcare, etc. But SCADA systems are extremely important for a manufacturing company to keep it essentially going, keeping it alive.
So. National security, you can say, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
All critical infrastructure runs on the nationwide, including your grids and transportations and electricity grids, to name a few.
Exactly, critical infrastructure, yes. As I said. So it's very good area to look into, and it's good to see that some people are looking out for it. What would you be doing if you weren't in cyber? Like, what's your other passions, I suppose?
Yes, that's an interesting one. I got a few hobbies outside work. I have a green thumb, as I say. I love gardening and backyard, or maybe organic farming is something which I would go once I retire. Focus more on that. I love also traveling, so maybe visit more countries as we speak. And I love teaching and writing as well. So another thing which I'm looking forward is if I have not been into this field, I could have been into an academic side of it, that is why I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements and mentoring to the young kids and students in cybersecurity. So that's something which I'm looking forward in next 10 years, maybe when I retire, I would go into a part-time professor. I would spend more time in academic rather than more on the cyber side. But of course, academic on the cyber side, which I love and talk about it.
Well, there's a lot of intersection, I reckon.
Yes.
It's it's kind of a natural next step when you've done it all, when you're already seasoned, you help the next generation.
Absolutely.
You don't just keep it all to yourself. So that's a very good path to look at. Maybe before we dive in, is there any interesting topics that you've thought of that we could talk about, or
go with the flow. I mean, cybersecurity, there is no deficiency or a lack of topics. You start anywhere and you end up talking about anything and everything under cyber. It's a big field these days. Back in the days when I started my career around 27 years back, it used to be only IT. Now we talk about everything, information technology, and maximum you can go is, software development or software engineering. That used to be the thing. Then later on, the world has moved from IT to network, and we have internet. I started my career before internet was a thing back in India. And to be honest, you'll be surprised. One of my very first job when I was doing my diploma in system management, I was hired to, my title was an internet user. My job was to go and use internet. And that there was no graphical internet this time. I used to use a shell command on a Unix box, dial-up, connect to VSNL as we call it in those days, and download the email in a text-based system, and take a print of those emails, give it to the company secretary. They would read the email, and they would write the email on the reply on the paper. I used to take that reply, paper-based, and then type it, and then reconnect the internet to the machine to the internet, send the emails, and disconnect it. That was my job as an internet user. And look at it now where we are today. We use AI to write those emails, or just say the command and it writes it for you. World has changed a lot in the last 25, 27 years.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember when software engineer as a title meant a lot more things than it does now. When people think of software engineer, they think mainly web developer, maybe a mobile app developer. Now there is so many different specialization, and like you said, a lot more is automated. Now I'm not sure if web developer is going to be a thing at the very least in the current form that it is in the upcoming 10 years. And just 30 years ago, like you mentioned, it's very, very different. I do know that when I was software engineer, and I was describing my job to my dad, who was also a software engineer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was actually my grandfather was also a software engineer, so kind of all the way. Yeah, very generational. I kind of actually broke out when I started ExeQuantum and stepped out of the technical role. They're all kind of very surprised by how different it is now. Instead of actually, the typing of the bits of 0 and 1s, you change to actually having a nice IDE that is glowing, dark mode, light mode, and you got all those tools. So yeah, cyber itself is also in its own world. We'll try to keep it at kind of the topic at hand, which is post-quantum cryptography or quantum computers and digital identity, because both of those are really very emerging topics. Yeah. I mean, I do know that controversially, the UK recently introduced the digital ID mandatory to all civilians. I'm not sure if it's all civilians, just don't quote me on that, but it is a mandatory digital ID that has had a lot of uproar, because on one hand, there's a privacy issue, surveillance, and of course, accessibility. Not everyone has an iPhone or a smartphone, but on the other hand, it is more convenient. I think the Australian government also rolled out their digital ID, mainly for driver's license. And same with quantum, very, very new field, about as early as the computers that used to take out per room in terms of stage. So I think it's kind of two technologies that not only are emerging, but also intersect a lot.
True. The world has changed a lot, as you're saying. Yep. People are talking about cryptography or quantum computing on and off. There was a couple of years back, it was more of a talk of the town. And all of a sudden now Gen AI came into the place, or AI, they took over the conversation. But I'm glad that people like you are still talking about quantum, and it is relevant. We will be seeing more and more use cases. It's a hype versus reality, and which will cover some stories. I have some interesting stories to share about what people are thinking. It's going to be end of the world. It's not like that, but we'll see how we go. But absolutely, it's an interesting and fascinating place to be here.
Yes, AI has taken the center stage after the launch of ChatGPT, and basically, if you're not AI, you're not going to get any investment. That's basically what people have been saying. Yeah. But quantum has been making, I think, a bit of a comeback recently. 2025 is considered the year of the quantum, although maybe it was designated as such before AI took everything. And there have been some recent breakthrough. I do know that Australia has been very focusing on becoming the leader. Google, Microsoft, etc. have been kind of showing us their own breakthroughs to various amounts of controversy and hype. Yeah, like you said yourself. It's important to differentiate. We're not facing an apocalypse. Like with AI, people thought we were facing an apocalypse. They might still think so. The truth is probably more boring than what we expect. Maybe we can dive right into it, especially let's maybe start with your field, the identity. Specifically, you talked a bit about non-human identities. Because at the end of the day, not everything on the internet, actually most of the internet is no longer human, it is bots. Yes. But there are, of course, you can't just say, oh no, we should get rid of all the bots and have, bots should also have their identity because they have the use case. Maybe tell us a bit about it.
Yeah. So since I work for an identity company, even much before joining the current company, Silverfort, I was in Microsoft, and I was watching the kind of attacks which are being targeted by nation-state actors. To give you a small story, 6-7 years back, I've been watching that ransomware was one of the biggest threat to everyone. We have been seeing ransomware is being used as one of the most attacked vector across around the world. And they have been targeted on your endpoint devices, your mobile phones or your laptops and desktops and whatnot. But we as an industry got smarter. We have hardened our end user devices with antivirus, anti-malware, BitLocker, encryptions and whatnot, and it's become very strong. So attacker has to move, right? They know that, okay, ransomware is still the number one, but the impact of ransomware, according to last year's Microsoft Digital Defense Report, they said, yes, ransomware is still the number one target, but the impact has reduced almost 40% in the previous year because we are getting better in protecting our data and our devices. So attackers are now moving towards the cloud side of it. They started targeting the cloud misconfiguration, your container security, your VMs and everything what you're running on cloud. What we have done, again, we got better. Now that we have secure endpoint, we started securing our cloud environment. We have added WAF, Web Application Firewall, cloud workload protection, cloud threat protections like Defender and whatnot, all those various technology. So attackers thinking, okay, now the cloud is getting secured. What else is not being secured? So they found a new area called identity. Because human is involved in that. It is easy to lure human being the biggest risk, also the biggest strength as well for every organization. So they're targeting all the human identities, sending you a phishing email or doing a social engineering attack. They get hold of your password, they got into it. But humans are also getting smarter day by day, being aware, about the security awareness and whatnot. And as we speak, we are moving into the month of October, which is supposed to be a security awareness month. So I'm glad that we are doing this podcast, and which could be released during the month of cyber awareness, so people can learn a lot. But then attackers see that, okay, yes, human is involved. What else is not being secured by the company? Now that's where the topic of a non-human identity comes into play. Non-human identity is a new terminology, but it's not a new topic. We have been using service accounts, which is typically is not supposed to be used by human, but sometimes human use it, especially the administrator and all. They use service account to do bypass of doing certain things. And then there are machine identities, your application identities. The whole has been categorized as a machine identity, but now we have given a separate category. Non-human identity includes machine identity as well, including your APIs, API keys, your certificate tokens, and many other things. So attackers are now targeting these kinds of non-human identities, which are not typically used by human, to target. Once they get hold of those kind of API keys or the secret tokens or a hard-coded passwords in your software applications, they can enter into your network and then target human or do whatever they want to do or steal the data as such. So this topic is now elevated again because of the AI. Because now that we're talking about the AI and agentic AI and bots and whatnot we just talk about, each of them have an identity, which is not a human, but so we consider it under the category of a non-human. And companies are now worried about that I am having so many agents running in my environment, but I don't have a visibility. I don't have a proper governance process, because that's what the attackers are targeting. So it's become a new buzzword as such, and new concerns for the organization as well, that, okay, I'm focusing on human identity, but I also have to start thinking about what process do I have in place for discovering, identifying what I have, protecting as well, and controlling as well all this non-human identity or the bot identity or the machine identity or the API keys and whatnot. There are 16, 17 or maybe 20 different things we can categorize under the non-human identity.
Yeah, that is an interesting point with AI, actually bringing back some of those attacks that were mentioned before. I did hear a story about how ChatGPT was, as an agent, like you said, it is running through the system, it is automating tasks, it is performing tasks.
Yeah.
It was social engineered essentially to give away all data information through an email because there was some sort of prompt injection in there.
Absolutely.
And that's something that you want to be able to keep track of, something that you want to be able to verify, prevent, revoke. At the end of the day, it is a very tricky area. I mean, who do you sue here? Do you sue the agent? Do you, the company probably already said we are not responsible for anything? And I guess that's where the IDs can jump in and help. So how exactly do those IDs work? What's the technology behind them on a high level?
It's more than a technology. For example, if you are implementing a new chatbot in your environment, so chatbot will have some sort of identity which is accessing your data or accessing your other application, and you can tie it back to the human as well, because some human has triggered it, right? But these are so hard to identify in a normal process. So you need a system in a place, or you need a technology in place which could go and discover these bot identities and tie up into a certain, what we call it, a governance process or a life cycle of it, all the way from enabling or creating those non-human identities or bot identities, whatever you call it, to maintaining them, to managing them, and also revoking those identities. So entire life cycle of a identity. So that's where it comes into play. Technology could be anything. Maybe you are implementing the new PKI infrastructures or a digital identity place as well, which again tying back to the human again. So everything has to be tied back to the human or an owner in our language. It has to be assigned an owner. It has to be a human or an application owner who owns that particular process, who owns that particular non-human identity. So at the end of the day, is all governance. Governance is a key thing here. Whatever we are talking about, your life cycle or the governance life cycle or the management life cycle has to be strong, because without visibility, you cannot manage. If you can't manage it, you can't measure it, as we call it.
So essentially, a non-human identity, their entire goal is to be tied back to a human at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Somebody has to own it, right? How do you, like the example which you said, if a bot or your agent makes a mistake, who are you going to sue? Is it the end user? Is it the agent, or is it the software company who created that agent, or is the human who triggered this particular thing in that? So without that, it's very hard to tighten accountability assigned to that, for any action which has been taken by an agent or a bot in your environment.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense, that if someone decides to use an AI to perform a task on their behalf, they should take some of the liabilities that could come with that. I did hear of a case of a lawyer that brought up cases that didn't exist because he asked ChatGPT to help him with a lawyer, like with this case. So in this is a very clear cut case. Okay, the lawyer asked ChatGPT to help him with a case. He brought up cases that don't exist. The lawyer is at fault here. But
Yes.
what about when it's more murky, when the AI has, like, the agent has done something that did something that kind of blurs it a bit more. So essentially, that identity between the agent ties back to the human, and then we know who to hold accountable. Essentially,
Yeah. Or in other language, we call it the ethical or the responsible way of using of AI. Because if you see a lot of these AI systems like Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini or a DeepSeek, they all come with a caveat that it's AI can make a mistake, verify for accuracy. So they have done their part in warning you, but if you are not doing a due diligence and you are completely relying on the answers given to you, you are responsible. You are accountable for that.
that makes sense. I mean, if you look up on the internet and find a wrong source and you cite that wrong source, that's on you.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the questions that people have been asking around this digital identity is the role of cryptography or lack thereof in it. That's why I kind of asked you a bit about the technology behind it. Like, for example, we're talking about digital ID. Do you think, or in your case, is there room for cryptography, or do you think that this is kind of more of an add-on, or is it potentially too constrained?
It's both, I would say. See, traditional PKI is a bit complex, hard to manage it as well. Digital identity is the future because you are tying it back to the human as well. And there are advantages of that. Non-repudiation, you can confirm who owns it. And there's, of course, verification process as well. It is fast and it is reliable as well. So it's a double-edged thing, as we call it. Yes, the back-end technology, PKI would help it, but digital identity is the future, which is much more faster, reliable, and the use cases are a lot of use cases, tying back to the AI, using the latest technology in doing what you're doing in that space as well. So it's both way, I would say. You can't get rid of the older one, PKI infrastructure as well.
So another area that have been kind of popping up lately in the field of cryptography is what's called identity-based digital signatures. So we're not going to dive deep into them like too much. It's a highly technical subject, which I can't pretend that I fully understand myself. I had that explained to me by my CTO maybe a week ago, and I'm still trying to understand it. So I guess this is kind of more of a theoretical, like hypothetical talk. Essentially, identity-based signatures are digital signatures that do not require PKI. So there is no third party that verifies each public key, like each signature on its own. It is a master key that is hosted somewhere safe, and that's the one that generates the signatures against the data itself.
Okay.
Do you think that those kind of signatures, like you mentioned that PKIs introduce a lot of issues, so they have their place, but they're not really there are some issues when introducing them to a digital ID system. But what about identity-based digital signatures? As far as you know, like from what you heard, do you think they're more of a strength? Like, are they potentially something to introduce, or maybe for very niche use cases, or are they more of a risk now?
I would say not as a risk. It's a niche area. More and more, and more into the government sector. That's what I've seen the use cases as well, and B2C as well, business to consumer. That's where like big banks and FMCG companies and all, they're introducing this concept to create that kind of a digital identity wallet, as you see. So I'm seeing more and more use cases being introduced in that area. Again, digging back to the topic which you said, one single master key. So I would be focusing more on protecting that keys of the kingdom, big master key. Maybe you can share more stories in terms of what are the things you can do to protect that master key. So again, to reduce the blast surface, and that digital or the asset is been protected much better way. you can share more on that if you have a more
Yes.
technical detail on that space.
Intersection between cryptography and digital identity and governance, because at the end of the day, cryptography is only as good as the keys staying secure, and therefore it's important to have governance around those keys. Maybe there should be a digital identity to the keys at some point. So that's kind of actually another topic, blockchain. Blockchain utilizes digital signatures to verify a person's ID. I'm not sure exactly how it works, like 100%. I do know that like there is no PKI. They have their public key that verifies their identity versus their personal signature, which is a use case to some people say is a use case to have digital identities for humans. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of use cases in the crypto mining space where they use it's actually backed up on the thing. Another interesting use case which is people are talking about is in the audit and risk, mostly on the audit side or the vendor verification side as well. So if you want to procure certain software or hire a service of a certain vendor, today what we do is we conduct a risk assessment or a vendor risk assessment. But what if somebody else has done the risk assessment for that vendor, and if you can rely that result based on your blockchain identity verification and get the results? It saves a lot of time as well. Just a simple use case I'm sharing, but there could be many other use cases in the space as well where you are relying on somebody else's work and you are just tapping on using a blockchain technology to verify whether saves time, save money as well, and you're getting the results what you wanted.
Interesting. So essentially, because blockchain has a history, a non-changeable history, you can basically says, oh, okay, it's been verified here and it's been verified there, so it should be fine for me.
Should be fine, yeah.
Exactly. At least I guess it also depends on when that took place, like you said, life cycle and everything. But essentially, that sounds like an interesting use case. And that's again where digital signatures can take place. Like if they're properly logged, if they're properly verified, that's a way to potentially minimize the leaking of, like, say, the public key from the PKI or the, well, public key is a public key, but you know what I mean. So now, of course, you know, I think we are a bit conscious of time, but maybe we can move on to our the big topic, the quantum question. So, of course, at the end of the day, we discussed human identities, you know, digital signatures, cryptography. All those things cannot be discussed without the elephant in the room, the golden computer in the room, quantum computers. They are developing, according to a lot of governments like Australia, the US, European Union. We have until 2030 essentially to prepare. According to Gartner, it's going to start quantum attacks in 2029. That's very, very soon. So I guess the question is, like, you know, what would be a case of a digital identity? Like, how does a quantum computer threaten digital identity, especially, for example, digital signatures are not involved?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So strength of the cryptographic key will be one of the biggest things to verify or to be checked. And there's an interesting concept I read on some paper, which is harvest now and crack it later, you know, in a way. So what does it talk about? So nation-state actors and generally attackers and all the hackers, they have been harvesting the cryptographic keys or PKI keys or whatever keys or digital identity keys for many years. However, there was no such technology with them to crack it. But we are going to see the storage is cheaper. So they've been storing those things and waiting for the right time or the right resources or the right computing power to use it to crack it. So if you haven't changed your keys in the last few years, I think this is the time to start refreshing them and making sure they are in a much more better strength than just your RSA 256, because it's now easy to crack it using the quantum computing or the qubits as we call it. And before to use a quantum computing power in your environment, you need a big machines, as you said, you need a room full of computers. But today, using a smartphone, you have the power of breaking certain things or certain keys. Is that going to be that easy as well? Some nano chips are available in the market which could crack your cryptographic keys within seconds. And big cloud provider will also provide something like quantum as a service. So you don't need to buy a big machines. Forget the universities or forget the defense. You don't need to be part of that part. You can easily buy a quantum service, fire up on your cloud environment, and start using those computing power to break certain things. So as you said, 2029 is not too far. We're already talking about 2025. And just to be ready, there are being standards being developed as well. And I would say the very first standard which I was reading and looking at is the NIST has released a certain standard. I think that's the very first step to start with. Look at the certain standards, what they're talking about, what needs to be done, and start preparing. 2029 is not too far. And look at all the keys, what you have, governance model back in the place, the life cycle of the whole key management, and start there, I would say.
First of all, very wise words. At the end of the day, it's not even going to require someone to actually have a quantum computer in their house in order to break your keys. Yeah. They can grab your data, harvest now, decrypt later. And I bet a lot of like malicious state actors, malicious terrorist organizations who have a lot more resources and
insider threat as well, yeah.
Insider threats, who'd love to buy all that data. You sell them the encrypted data, they would decrypt it for you. Yeah. You give them some money, everyone is happy except their user.
Absolutely. Cybercrime as a service, which is a new thing, right? CAS, as we call it. There are groups available who will help you every stage of your cybercrime. You don't need to be in the front picture, you can still make a lot of money.
Well, that sounds like an interesting business model. So you see, I can see quantum cracking as a service becoming a thing very, very soon. Like especially certain countries who won't mind, who already probably probably causing enough issues that they might as well do that as well. So, and you're not small. Like you said, storage is very cheaper. There's no such thing as I'm too small, I'm not going to be noticed. It's so easy to harvest all that data that it's just you just throw a massive net, you grab a lot of small fish. Overfishing is a problem. We can grab all the fish in the ocean, we can grab all the data in the internet. Which actually also comes down to another point. The thing is, NIST have standardized those algorithms, namely MLChem, Module Lattice-Based Key Encapsulation Mechanism, MLDSA, which is a lattice-based digital signatures, and SLHDSA, hash-based digital signature. The reason now, one thing that is interesting is that at first, we had essentially only two cryptographic algorithms, elliptic curve and RSA. Now we have three, and in the upcoming year, there is, I think, 40 new candidates.
Wow, 14?
14.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's a lot of digital signatures. And they're all utilizing different type of math behind it. The reason for that is because lattice-based algorithms are kind of the near-term solution, the key encapsulation mechanism I mentioned, some of the digital signatures. However, they are very practical, but they're a bit problematic. Recently, there have been some breakthroughs, which may show that lattice-based algorithms might actually break in the upcoming years. For example, there was a recent breakthrough that broke 200 dimensions of the 400 dimensions needed to break lattice-based cryptography. And it's not linear, it's not like we are halfway through, we are much less than that. But that was done with a classical computer, no quantum computers, no AI. So imagine with quantum computers. That's why they introduced all those new algorithms that are based on different type of math, so that you need to be ready, for example, now with that knowledge in mind, that there are 40 new algorithms coming in 2027, and then there are a bunch more. For digital, and that was just the digital signatures. I didn't mention the key encapsulation mechanism. That's a few more. This is very daunting. All those new algorithms coming, what if this algorithm breaks? Why do I need even to do anything? What would you say, to a digital ID provider, how to handle all this confusion?
Rather than answering that question for you, actually, I want to ask you a question because I'm running on the time. Does a person needs to be a mathematical genius to understand and work in this all these new algorithms which are coming up? And if somebody is starting their career or somebody is finishing their degree in cyber or software engineering, what are the things they should need to learn and focus on so our audience can learn out of that? And then we can cover your topic some other time.
Yes, of course. So quick note, honestly, that this is, I tried a long time to explain it, simplify it, make it clear. I think at the end of the day, this is an inherently complex topic. You can only simplify it too much before you start downplaying the urgency or the importance of it. However, you don't need to be a mathematical genius either. As I mentioned, like, I can't pretend that I understand all the different algorithms behind, that are quantum secure. But I know one thing you can learn is the use cases for different mathematical algorithms. For example, some digital signatures are faster, some digital signatures are more secure, some digital signatures have better key length, etc. And therefore they can be used for different use cases. There is a bit of a learning curve, but there is always, it's like if you don't learn about AI, you don't need to be an AI technical genius, but you do need to learn about it. So same here.
Yes, more about awareness, I would say, and being aware how it works or how it operates in a way.
Exactly.
So you can protect and manage it.
And I guess what we would learn here is that now we are facing a new world of cryptography, which ties very closely to cybersecurity, which is we are no longer in the world where cryptography is kind of taken care of and static, where two algorithms rule everything and we're all good. We're now facing what I like to call the Wild West of cryptography, and we need to be ready. We need to change our mindset on how we do it. Like, we can't just implement this encryption and forget about it. We now need to be ready for those algorithms to be broken and to be able to switch to the new ones immediately. As the term says, crypto agility. You need to be crypto agile. You need to be ready to switch as needed. Because if you don't, well, a company that doesn't have their cryptography in check cannot really exist in the digital world, can they?
Yeah, and you said correctly, right? So it goes back to the life cycle. Everyone talks about discovery part of it, but how do you manage it, and how do you protect it? That's the key thing in this area of field, and I think that's what you are trying to solve the problem. Thus, visibility is not going to help you. Managing and protecting also it's has to be part of the entire ecosystem.
Exactly, and that's why I was thinking maybe there is, again, maybe it's a very far-fetched idea, just very, very high-level hypothesis. Maybe there is a room for digital identity in cryptography, not just the other way around.
Yeah.
Because like now algorithms are going to need to be changed, keys need to be changed, need to be tied to someone. And if at the end of the day someone introduces a vulnerable algorithm, or out of their fault, out of carelessness, or doesn't upgrade the algorithm in time, we need to know who did it and why.
Supply chain, supply chain attack. Supply chain attack applicable to the cryptography world as well. So
yeah, exactly. So maybe cryptography, digital ID, and governance have more of an mutual intersection than initially thought. You'd think it's like, okay, cryptography secures this, and digital ID verify that, but maybe they actually can all be communicating together a lot more than we thought. What about, you mentioned earlier that you saw some hype in this world. Maybe share one more story before we wrap it up to kind of end on a lighter note, because we ended I don't want to end with we're all going to die, it's all going to be scary.
No, as I said, it's more of a hype that, okay, it's going to be end of world. Cryptography is kind of end of world, or quantum is going to be at end of world. It's not really. It's a marathon, I would say. It's a very slow process. It's not something which is going to happen tomorrow or day after. You just said an example of 2029, which is a little bit not too far, but not too too far and not too near as well. But it's a marathon we're talking about. So don't be afraid that because of quantum being much more advanced, it's going to break things and work. It's a long-term process, but we need to start somewhere. That's why I was talking about NIST is a great framework. Please read through that. There are lots of free trainings available by big companies like Microsoft and AWS and Google. They have launched this kind of concept much more earlier. Read a little bit about them. Be a quantum aware rather than you don't need to be an expert. As you said, like AI, You don't need to be an AI expert to use the ChatGPT, or as an example, right? We are marketing a lot about ChatGPT, but that's how it is. Everyone knows about it. Everyone understands. So be a quantum aware, not a quantum expert, and then start talking about it in the company and be ready for it.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, technology is advancing, whether we like it or not. Very exciting times ahead, but we need to be aware and ready for what's coming. Before we close it, is there any last minute questions or anything else?
I think we covered quite a few topics. Human identity, non-human identity, PKI, digital identity, quantum qubit. I think there's a lot more to digest out of this particular podcast. But one thing is, don't be scared of the future, but embrace it and be prepared. Governance is the biggest takeaway, I would say. Learn how to discover, manage, protect that part of it, life cycle to it, and assigning the right ownership to the right people will be a long way to go, I would say.
Well, I think very, very astute. I think, maybe then stay tuned for part 2 then for this podcast, where we can dive in a bit more into some of these topics. Thank you very much for your time today, for taking the time out of your day and coming here to talk. And I'm looking forward to chatting more in the future.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you for having me here on your podcast.